Commander Velthar stared at the damage reports on the screen and felt their throat sacs tighten with worry. The numbers were bad. Hull integrity at 47%. Life support systems failing. 3 crew members dead in the attack. The Kashari Coalition survey vessel, Wandering Echo, limped through empty space on engines that sputtered and threatened to die with every passing hour. 6 cycles had passed since they sent out the emergency beacon. 6 cycles without a single response from any Kashari vessel. The nearest Coalition station was 3 weeks away, and their life support would fail in less than 2. Velthar had commanded survey missions for 12 years, mapping unexplored regions and cataloging new worlds. They had never felt this helpless. The Krell raiders had come out of nowhere near the outer reaches. 8 small, fast ships against 1 unarmed survey vessel. The Wandering Echo had tried to run, but the raiders were faster. They wanted cargo, technology, anything valuable. When Velthar refused to surrender, the raiders opened fire. The attack lasted 17 minutes. It felt like hours. Science Officer Quinma entered the captain's nest, moving carefully in the reduced gravity. Life support was being rationed to essential areas only. "Commander," Quinma said quietly, "I have a suggestion. You will not like it." Velthar turned from the damage reports. "Tell me." "There is a system 4 days away. Even with our damaged engines, we can reach it." Quinma pulled up a star chart. The Sol system. Earth. The suggestion hung in the air like a dangerous idea. Earth, the human homeworld. Velthar knew about humans, of course. Everyone in the galaxy did. They were newcomers, barely 3 generations since first contact. Young species, primitive by most standards, though friendly enough during diplomatic meetings. But the Kashari had no treaties with them, no trade agreements, no mutual defense pacts. Asking humans for help felt like gambling with their lives. "What choice do we have?" Quinma asked, reading Velthar's hesitation. "We die out here in 2 weeks, or we ask strangers for help and maybe survive." Velthar looked at their crew through the nest's observation window. 18 Kashari, far from home, trusting their commander to save them. The decision felt heavy, but Quinma was right. There was no real choice at all. "Set course for Earth," Velthar ordered, "and may the ancestors guide us." The Wandering Echo turned slowly toward the Sol system, its engines groaning with the effort. They broadcast distress signals in 17 languages, including the crude human English they had learned from diplomatic databases. The message was simple. Ship damaged, crew in danger, requesting emergency assistance. Velthar expected to wait hours, maybe days, for a response. Humans were supposed to be scattered across their system, still building their first real space infrastructure. Instead, a reply came within 3 hours of crossing into Sol space. "Attention unknown vessel. This is Captain Minjun Park of the United Nations Spaceship Horizons Promise. We are reading your distress beacon clearly. Please maintain your current course. We are moving to intercept and will guide you to Luna Station for emergency repairs. Medical teams are being prepared. You are safe now." The voice was warm, almost cheerful. Velthar felt something unclench in their chest. Safe. The human had said they were safe. "This is Commander Velthar of the Kashari Coalition vessel Wandering Echo. We are grateful for your assistance, Captain Park. Our ship is badly damaged. 3 crew members are dead. 5 are injured. We need help." "We understand, Commander. Help is coming. We are transmitting structural data to your navigation system. This will help you compensate for your hull damage and make the journey easier. You will be at Luna Station in 16 hours. Stay strong. We have you now." Velthar looked at Quinma, who was staring at the communications console with wide eyes. The human transmission included detailed engineering data, scans of safe approach vectors, and even medical information about Kashari physiology pulled from galactic databases. They had prepared all of this in 3 hours. "They were ready for us," Quinma whispered. "How?" The answer came when the Wandering Echo's sensors detected the escort. 4 human vessels appeared on their screens, moving into formation around the damaged survey ship. They were military craft, sleek and powerful, with weapon systems that showed clearly on scans. But the weapons were powered down, deliberately made safe, a gesture of trust. Wandering Echo, this is Captain Park again. We have established an escort formation around your vessel. You are now under the protection of the United Nations Space Command. Nothing will harm you while you are in our space. Please accept our welcome to the Sol system. Velthar had been a ship commander for many years. They had dealt with dozens of species, hundreds of first contact situations, and countless diplomatic protocols. They knew how the galaxy worked. Species helped each other when there were treaties involved, when there was profit to be made, when political advantage could be gained. Species did not scramble 4 military vessels and emergency response teams for strangers who could offer nothing in return. But humans, apparently, did exactly that. The journey to Luna Station took 15 hours. Velthar barely slept. They spent the time watching the human escorts through the viewports, watching the growing shape of Luna Station ahead. And what a station it was! The database had called it a repair facility. That was like calling an ocean a puddle. Luna Station sprawled across the lunar orbit like a small city. Construction bays stretched for kilometers. Hundreds of ships moved between docking ports. Manufacturing facilities glowed with work lights. Defensive platforms orbited at regular intervals. The humans had been busy since joining galactic society. Very busy. Wandering Echo, you are clear for docking at Bay 7. Engineering teams are standing by. Please reduce speed to 0.01 standard and follow the guidance beacons. Velthar guided their damaged ship into the massive bay, which was sized for vessels twice their mass. Before the docking clamps fully engaged, they could see human engineers in protective suits swarming toward the hull. Dozens of them, carrying equipment, already assessing damage, already working to help. A new voice came over the communications system. Commander Velthar, this is Station Director Seo-Yun Kim. Welcome to Luna Station. I want you to know that we are conducting full structural restoration on your vessel. Not just emergency repairs, full restoration. And there is no charge. Your people are our guests, not our customers. Please allow my staff to escort you and your crew to quarters where you can rest. Your ship is in good hands. Velthar felt their throat sacs tighten again, but this time not from worry, from something else entirely. Something that felt like hope mixed with disbelief. They had come to Earth desperate and damaged, expecting basic repairs and calculated debts. Instead, they found something the galaxy had not prepared them for. They found humans, and nothing would ever be quite the same. The quarters were beautiful. That was the first surprise. Velthar had expected basic accommodations, functional rooms where they could rest while repairs happened. Instead, the human escorts led the Kashari crew to a section of Luna Station that looked like it was designed for diplomats. Large windows showed Earth hanging in space below. The sleeping platforms were sized correctly for Kashari bodies. The environmental controls were already set to their preferred temperature and humidity. There were even decorative plants from their homeworld in small containers. "How did you know?" Velthar asked the human escort, a young woman who introduced herself as Lieutenant Ji-Won Lee. "We accessed the galactic database on Kashari environmental preferences," Ji-Won explained with a smile. "We wanted you to be comfortable. You have been through something terrible. The least we can do is make sure you can rest properly." Quinma touched one of the plants gently, their fingers trembling slightly. "These are from Kashar, our homeworld. How did you get these here?" "We have botanical samples from most spacefaring species," Ji-Won said, "for situations exactly like this. When people are far from home and hurting, small reminders help. At least that is what humans have learned. We hope it works for you too." The medical examinations were thorough but gentle. Dr. Ji-Won Lee, who Velthar learned was the lieutenant's aunt and shared the same name, treated the 5 injured crew members with technology that surprised the Kashari commander. The medical equipment was advanced, more sophisticated than what the Kashari used themselves. And the doctor's manner was kind, explaining everything before she did it, making sure her patients felt safe. "Will they recover?" Velthar asked, watching the doctor work on Engineer Tharnok, who had suffered severe burns in the attack. "Yes," Dr. Lee said confidently. "Complete recovery within 6 days. The burns look worse than they are. We have tissue regeneration technology that will repair the damage." She paused, then added more quietly, "I am very sorry about the crew members you lost. There are no words that make that better. But the ones who survived will be fine. You have my word." When Velthar tried to discuss payment for the medical treatment, Dr. Lee looked genuinely confused. "Payment? Commander, your people were hurt and asked for help. That is all that matters. We do not charge for medical care in emergencies. That would be like charging someone for air to breathe." The cultural difference was so vast that Velthar struggled to understand it. In the galaxy they knew, everything had a price. Medical care, repairs, even emergency rescue came with debts attached. The humans seemed to operate on completely different principles. On the second day, Chief Engineer Tae-hyun Cho invited Velthar to the station's observation lounge. The human was older than most of the crew, with gray in his hair and smile lines around his eyes. He carried a metal pot and several small cups. "I thought you might like to try something," Tae-hyun said, setting the pot down on a table near the large windows. "Coffee. It is a stimulant drink, a social tradition among humans. We share it with friends." Velthar understood the significance immediately. In Kashari culture, sharing food or drink was how clans formed bonds. To offer such a thing to a stranger was to say, "I consider you family." The humans probably did not know that, but the gesture touched Velthar deeply anyway. The coffee was bitter and strange, nothing like Kashari beverages. But it was warm, and the act of sitting together, drinking from small cups, felt peaceful after so much chaos. Tae-hyun seemed content to sit in silence at first, just watching Earth turn below them. "Your ship will be ready in 3 more days, Tae-hyun finally said. "Maybe 4. We are being very thorough." "I expected you to do basic repairs only," Velthar admitted. "Enough for us to return home. This seems like much more." "It is much more," Tae-hyun agreed. "We are reinforcing your hull with composite materials, upgrading your shield generators, tuning your engines beyond factory specifications. When you leave here, the Wandering Echo will be better than it was when it was first built." "Why?" The question came out before Velthar could stop it. "We cannot repay this. We have no treaties with Earth, no alliance. Why do so much for strangers?" Tae-hyun poured more coffee, taking his time to answer. "Tell me about the attack, if you are willing to talk about it." So Velthar told him about the Krell raiders who had been growing bolder in the outer reaches for months, about how they attacked survey vessels and mining operations, taking cargo and sometimes crew, about how the Kashari coalition had filed formal complaints with the Galactic Council, but the response had been slow. Military escorts were expensive and tied up defending more important systems. Small science vessels like the Wandering Echo were considered acceptable losses. "Acceptable losses," Tae-hyun repeated, and his expression became dark. "We have a different view. Nobody should be an acceptable loss. The Galactic Council has assigned 2 patrol cruisers to the region," Velthar continued. "But the outer reaches span dozens of light years. 2 ships cannot cover that much space, so the raids continue. And we lose people." Tae-hyun was quiet for a long moment, staring into his coffee cup. When he spoke again, his voice was soft but intense. "My grandfather survived a war on Earth. He told me stories about what happens when good people decide some lives matter less than others, when bureaucrats make calculations about acceptable casualties. He taught me that evil wins not because it is strong, but because good people do math instead of what is right. But the practical concerns, Velthar started to say. We want you to make it home safely, Taehyun interrupted gently. And maybe survive if you meet those raiders again. That is practical enough for me. The rest is just details. Over the next days, Velthar watched the repairs with growing amazement. The human engineers did not just fix what was broken, they improved everything. The hull plating was stronger. The shield generators were more efficient. The engines ran smoother than they had in years. When Velthar protested again that this was too much, Captain Park responded simply, "We want our friends to be safe." Is that so strange? On the fourth day, something changed. An admiral arrived at Luna Station, and Captain Park requested a private meeting with Velthar. The Kashari commander followed the captain to a conference room where a stern-looking human woman in an impressive uniform waited. "Commander Velthar, this is Admiral Haiwan Yoon," Park said. "She has some questions about the Krell raiders." The admiral's first words were direct. "Are they still operating in the outer reaches? Are there other ships at risk right now?" Velthar felt a chill run down their spine. They knew that tone. They had used it themselves when planning difficult operations. "Yes," they answered carefully. "The raids happen every few weeks. Many vessels travel those routes. Science ships, cargo haulers, mining transports. The raiders strike randomly. Everyone is at risk." Admiral Yoon nodded slowly. "I see. Captain Velthar, I need you to tell me everything you know about these raiders. Their numbers, their tactics, their weapons, everything. Can you do that?" "Yes," Velthar said. "But may I ask why?" The admiral's expression did not change, but something flickered in her eyes, something that reminded Velthar of a predator that had just decided to hunt. "Because nobody should be an acceptable loss, and because we can help." Velthar felt the world shift slightly. The humans were not just offering repairs and kindness. They were offering something far more dangerous and far more valuable. They were offering to care about strangers enough to risk themselves. The meeting lasted 3 hours. Velthar shared every detail from their sensor logs, every encounter with raiders they had documented, every report from other Kashari vessels. The admiral listened to everything, asked precise questions, and took careful notes. When the meeting finally ended, Admiral Yoon stood and extended her hand in the human gesture of respect. Velthar had learned about handshakes from diplomatic briefings. They took the admiral's hand carefully. "Thank you for this information, Commander," the admiral said. "You have been very helpful. Now please excuse me. I have a fleet to organize." Velthar stared at her. "A fleet?" "A fleet," Admiral Yoon confirmed. "We are going to solve your raider problem, and then we are going to have a very pointed conversation with the Galactic Council about acceptable losses." The briefing room on Luna Station was crowded with human officers. Velthar sat at the large table, surrounded by captains and commanders and specialists who all seemed very interested in what a Kashari survey ship had experienced in the outer reaches. Admiral Yoon stood at the head of the table, controlling the display screens with practiced ease. "Commander Velthar has provided detailed sensor logs from 3 separate encounters with Krell raiders over the past 8 months, the admiral said. "The pattern is consistent. Raider packs of 5 to 8 ships, targeting lone vessels, taking cargo and occasionally crew. They operate in a region spanning dozens of light years with only 2 Galactic Council patrol cruisers attempting coverage." One of the human captains, a woman named Sun-hee Kang, shook her head in disgust. 2 cruisers for that much space? That is not security. That is abandonment. "The Galactic Council has declared the raider situation a regional nuisance," Velthar said quietly. They have assigned resources they consider appropriate for the threat level. A nuisance? Admiral Yoon repeated, and her voice was tight with controlled anger. She turned to face Velthar directly. Commander, you lost 3 crew members to this nuisance. How many other ships have been attacked? How many other people have died? Velthar felt their throat sacs tighten. At least 20 vessels in the past year. 47 confirmed deaths. The losses are considered statistically insignificant by the Council's metrics. The silence in the room was heavy. Several human officers exchanged glances. One of them, a younger man, muttered something in Korean that Velthar's translator could not quite catch, but the tone was clear enough. Anger. Deep, personal anger. Admiral Yoon walked to the windows and stared out at the shipyards beyond. When she spoke again, her voice was softer but somehow more intense. Humans learned a hard lesson in our history. We learned it slowly, painfully, through wars and suffering that should never have happened. We learned that evil triumphs when good people calculate acceptable losses instead of unacceptable injustice. She turned back to face the room. 47 people are dead. Not statistics. People. Beings with families and dreams and futures that were stolen from them by raiders who knew nobody would stop them. And the galaxy's response is to file the reports and send 2 ships to patrol an impossibly large area. She paused. That ends now. Velthar felt their heart beating faster. Admiral, what are you proposing? The United Nations Space Command is prepared to dispatch a task force to the outer reaches to eliminate this raider threat, Admiral Yoon said. We have no jurisdiction there, no formal authority, no treaty obligations, but we have the capability and the will. Commander Velthar, we are asking your permission to escort the Wandering Echo back to Kashari space and to continue operations against the raiders until the threat is eliminated. Velthar could not breathe for a moment. The translator had to be wrong. Humans could not be offering to launch a military intervention in a conflict that did not involve them. I do not understand. Why would humans risk war with the Krell for Kashari you have never met? We have no alliance, no treaty obligations. Why? Captain Park, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. Because they are people. Because they are in danger. Because we can help. What other reason do we need? The Galactic Council might view this as aggression, Velthar said, trying to think through the politics. A power play by a newcomer species. The diplomatic fallout could be severe. It could damage Earth's reputation, maybe even lead to sanctions. Admiral Yoon smiled slightly, and it was not a comforting expression. Let me worry about galactic politics, Commander. We have already sent formal notifications to the Council. We are calling this a humanitarian security operation, and we are offering it as a free service to any species affected by raider activity in the region. If the Council objects to us solving problems they ignored, that says more about them than us. But the cost, Velthar protested. The risk to your people. Your ships. We cannot repay this. We are not asking you to repay it, Captain Park said gently. We are offering to help. There is a difference. Over the next day, Velthar watched through the station viewports as the human fleet assembled. It was not a few patrol ships. It was a full battle group. 2 cruisers, massive and powerful, their hulls bristling with weapons. 4 destroyers, fast and deadly. 8 frigates that moved through space like hunting cats, and a carrier, its launch bays full of support craft and fighters. The fleet gathered near Luna Station like a school of predatory fish, beautiful and terrifying. The Wandering Echo crew walked through the station in stunned silence. They watched the human ships through every available viewport. They counted the vessels and tried to understand what was happening. Quinma found Velthar in the observation lounge and sat down heavily. They are launching an entire fleet, Quinma said. For us, for strangers who can offer them nothing. I know, Velthar said. This does not make sense. Species do not do this. The galaxy does not work this way. I know, Velthar repeated. What are they? Quinma asked quietly. What kind of species looks at strangers in trouble and decides to risk everything to help them? Velthar had no answer. They had been asking themselves the same question for days. That night, the humans hosted a formal dinner for the Kashari crew. It was held in a large room with windows showing the stars. The food was carefully prepared to be safe for Kashari biology, and there was plenty of it. More coffee appeared, which several crew members had started to enjoy despite its strange taste. Human officers sat with Kashari engineers and scientists, sharing stories and asking questions about each other's worlds. Chief Engineer Tai Hyun found Velthar near the end of the evening. He carried a sealed container and a datapad. For the journey home, he said, handing both to Velthar. Coffee beans and instructions for brewing. Something to remember friends by. Velthar took the container carefully, feeling the weight of it. Such a simple gift. Such a profound one. I do not know how to thank you. Any of you. You have given us so much. You thanked us by trusting us enough to ask for help, Taehyun said. That is enough. Admiral Yoon approached before Velthar could respond. Commander, we depart at dawn. Your ship is ready. Better than ready. Actually, Engineer Cho has outdone himself. The Wandering Echo will be the most advanced survey vessel in the Kashari fleet. I wish we could repay you somehow, Velthar said. You can, the Admiral replied. You can tell your people what happened here. You can tell them that when you asked humans for help, we gave it freely. And you can tell them that friendship is not a transaction. It is a choice. We choose to be your friends, Commander Velthar. Now and in the future. The next morning, the Kashari crew prepared to leave Luna Station. They walked through corridors they had come to know over 8 days. They said goodbye to human engineers and doctors and officers who had become familiar faces. Lieutenant Jiwon gave each crew member a small earth plant in a container as a farewell gift. Dr. Lee hugged Engineer Tharn Ok, whose burns had healed completely, leaving only faint scars. Captain Park escorted Velthar to the Wandering Echo personally. The ship gleamed in the docking bay lights, looking new and strong. Park smiled at Velthar's expression. She is ready for anything now, Park said. Take care of her, and take care of yourself, Commander. Will I see you again? Velthar asked. Count on it, Park said. We are going to be neighbors for a while. The fleet will be patrolling the outer reaches until the raider threat is eliminated. That might take weeks, maybe months. We will be around. The Wandering Echo undocked from Luna Station with the full human battle group forming up around them. Velthar stood on the bridge, watching the display screens show the formation. Their small survey vessel sat in the center of the formation, surrounded by warships that could level cities, protected, safe, valued. Course set for Kashari space, the navigator reported. Estimated travel time, 14 days. 14 days escorted by humanity's finest, Quinma said quietly. I still cannot believe this is happening. Neither can I, Velthar admitted. But it is. The question is, what happens when the galaxy finds out what humans are willing to do for strangers? Admiral Yoon's voice came over the communications channel. All ships, this is Fleet Command. Formation is set. Speeds are matched. Let us take our friends home. The fleet jumped to faster-than-light travel, and the stars stretched into lines of light around them. The journey through space felt different this time. The Wandering Echo traveled surrounded by the human fleet in a protective formation that never wavered. What should have been 2 weeks of anxiety and fear through dangerous space became almost peaceful. The human ships maintained constant communication, checking on the Kashari crew several times each day. Meals were shared via video connection. Cultural information was exchanged. Stories were told. Velthar learned that Captain Park had 2 children back on Earth, that Admiral Yoon had been in space for 30 years, that Chief Engineer Tae-hyun collected old books and played an Earth instrument called a guitar. The humans asked questions about Kashari culture, about their homeworld, about what it was like to map new star systems. They were genuinely curious, genuinely interested, not as data collection, as friendship. On the 8th day, everything changed. The fleet's long-range sensors detected a disturbance ahead. Velthar was on the bridge of the Wandering Echo when Captain Park's face appeared on their communication screen. "Commander, we are reading a chase in progress. A Krell raider pack is pursuing what looks like a Thelian cargo hauler. 6 raider vessels. The cargo ship is trying to run, but they are slower. The raiders will catch them in approximately 20 minutes. Velthar felt their blood go cold. Another ship, another crew about to experience what they had experienced. "What can we do?" "We are going to intercept," Park said, and his voice was calm and professional. "Admiral Yoon has ordered battle stations. Commander, we need you to fall back to a safe distance. We will handle this." "Be careful," Velthar said. Park smiled. "Always. Watch and see how humans deal with bullies." The human fleet accelerated with startling speed. The Wandering Echo's sensors tracked everything as the formation shifted from protective escort to attack pattern. The coordination was beautiful, almost like a dance. Every ship knew exactly where to be and when to be there. Admiral Yoon's voice broadcast on an open channel. "Attention Krell vessels. This is Admiral Haewon Yoon of the United Nations Space Command. You are engaged in illegal piracy. Power down your weapons immediately and prepare to be boarded. This is your only warning." The response from the raiders was predictable. They ignored the warning and continued pursuing the Thelian cargo hauler. 2 of them even broke off to engage the human ships, apparently thinking they could scare off the newcomers with a show of force. They were very wrong. The human destroyers moved like living things, cutting off escape vectors with precision that made Velthar's navigation officer gasp in admiration. The frigates boxed in the raider formation, weapons armed, but not yet firing. The cruisers positioned themselves between the raiders and the fleeing cargo hauler. Within minutes, the Krell raiders were surrounded with nowhere to run. "Final warning," Admiral Yoon broadcast. "Surrender now, or we will disable your vessels." One of the raider ships fired missiles at the nearest human destroyer. It was a mistake. The human point defense systems came alive, filling space with precisely targeted energy beams. Every single missile was intercepted and destroyed before getting within a kilometer of their target. Then, the destroyer returned fire. The human weapons were surgical. They did not destroy the raider ship. They disabled it. Engine hits that left the vessel drifting. Weapon strikes that took out every offensive system without breaching the hull. Within 30 seconds, the raider ship was helpless but intact, its crew alive but defeated. The other 5 raiders tried to scatter. The human fleet was ready. Destroyers moved to intercept with speed that should have been impossible for ships that size. Frigates fired precisely, taking out engines and weapons without causing casualties. The cruisers coordinated the entire operation like conductors leading an orchestra. 12 minutes after the engagement began, all 6 Krell raider vessels were disabled and contained. Not destroyed, not left as debris and bodies. Disabled, captured. The crews alive to face justice. The Thelian cargo hauler broadcast frantic thanks on every frequency. Admiral Yoon responded with the same professional calm. "You are safe now. Maintain your course and you will be clear of the area shortly. If you encounter any further threats, broadcast on this frequency. United Nations Space Command vessels are now operating in this region." Then the Admiral opened a new broadcast on multiple frequencies, speaking in several languages. "This is Admiral Haewon Yoon of the United Nations Space Command to all vessels in the outer reaches. Raider activity in this region is now under active suppression. Any vessels engaged in piracy will be intercepted and disabled. Crews will be handed over to the Galactic Council for prosecution. Legitimate traffic is welcome and will be protected. This region is no longer safe for predators. On the Wandering Echo's bridge, Quinma stared at the display screens showing the disabled raider ships surrounded by human vessels. They did not destroy them. They could have, but they did not. Humans fight differently, Velthar said quietly. They fight to stop threats, not to kill. There is a difference. Over the next 5 days, the pattern repeated. The human fleet encountered 4 more raider groups. Each time, the response was the same. Precise interception, overwhelming force, demands for surrender, minimal destruction. 23 raider vessels were captured without the humans losing a single ship or suffering any casualties. The Krell crews were secured and prepared for transfer to Galactic Council authorities. News traveled faster than light in the galaxy. Merchant networks shared information instantly. Within days, every trader and transport captain in 3 sectors knew. The outer reaches had protection now. Real protection. The humans had come, and they were not tolerating raiders anymore. When the Wandering Echo finally approached Kashari space after 14 days of travel, they were met by a coalition fleet, not to intercept, but to escort. The human intervention had become galactic news. Every major species was talking about it. The Kashari Coalition Council had requested a formal meeting with Admiral Yoon. Velthar received a message from the Coalition's diplomatic service. The human intervention had created a political situation. The Council needed to manage it carefully, but the message also included something else: gratitude. Simple, honest gratitude that the Wandering Echo and its crew had survived, that they were coming home. Admiral Yoon announced that a human diplomatic vessel would remain in Kashari space after the battle group departed. To discuss ongoing security cooperation, she said. But Velthar understood the real message. The humans were not going to abandon them. This was not a one-time rescue. This was the beginning of something lasting. The Wandering Echo docked at Kashar Prime Station in orbit above their homeworld. Velthar expected a quiet arrival, maybe a few officials to debrief them. Instead, there was a crowd. News of their ordeal and rescue had made them minor celebrities. The Kashari people wanted to see them, but more than that, they wanted to see the humans. Captain Park and several human officers joined Velthar for the walk through the spaceport. The crowd pressed forward, not with fear or suspicion, but with curiosity and gratitude. Children held signs written in crude English that their parents had helped them make. Thank you, Earth. Humans are friends, heroes from the stars. Park looked overwhelmed, his eyes wide as he took in the crowd. Then he grinned at Velthar. This was not what we expected when we picked up your distress signal. This was not what I expected when I sent it, Velthar replied. A small Kashari child pushed through the crowd, holding a drawing. It showed a human ship and a Kashari ship together among the stars. The child offered it to Captain Park, shyly. Park knelt down to accept it, treating the simple drawing like a precious gift. Thank you, Park said softly. I will keep this forever. The child smiled and ran back to their parent. Velthar watched the exchange and felt something shift inside. This was bigger than one rescue, bigger than one fleet action. This was the moment when 2 species stopped being strangers and became something else. Something the galaxy had not seen in a long time. That evening, Velthar stood in their home for the first time in months. Their family surrounded them, grateful they had survived. But Velthar kept thinking about the humans, about coffee and conversation, about fleets launched for strangers, about a species that measured civilization not in technology or territory, but in whether you helped someone who could not repay you. The sealed container of coffee beans sat on the table. Velthar touched it gently. Tomorrow, They would meet with the Coalition Council and the human delegation. There would be politics and diplomacy and complicated discussions about the future. But tonight, there was simply gratitude and the beginning of understanding that the galaxy had changed. Not because of weapons or threats, but because somewhere out there, humans had decided that friendship was reason enough to risk everything. The next day would bring new challenges. But for now, Velthar was home, safe, surrounded by family. And somewhere in orbit above, human ships stood watch over Kashari space, keeping their new friends safe. The Wandering Echo's journey was over, but a much larger journey was just beginning. 3 weeks after returning to Kashar, Velthar stood in the Grand Council chamber and watched history being made. The chamber was ancient, built from stone quarried on their homeworld thousands of years ago. Every important decision in Kashari history had been debated here. Today's debate might be the most important of all. Admiral Haewon Yoon stood at the speaker's platform, addressing the assembled council members with calm confidence. Behind her, display screens showed detailed reports of the anti-raider operations. The numbers told a clear story. 23 raider vessels captured, 94 Krell raiders detained and transferred to Galactic Council custody, 0 civilian casualties, shipping losses in the outer reaches reduced to 0, not reduced, eliminated. The raiders were gone. The United Nations Space Command conducted operations for 17 days, Admiral Yoon said. We encountered no significant resistance. The raiders, when faced with organized military response, either surrendered or fled. Many have now departed the region entirely. The few that remain are being actively hunted by continued patrols. One of the council elders, High Speaker Threnva, leaned forward in his seat. Admiral, your military achievement is impressive, but the political situation is complicated. The Galactic Council has received formal complaints from the Krell government about human aggression and overreach. They claim you violated sovereignty and exceeded your authority. With respect, High Speaker, we violated no sovereignty, Admiral Yoon replied. We operated in unclaimed space against criminal elements who were preying on civilian traffic. As for authority, we acted on the ancient principle that witnessing injustice creates moral authority to stop it. A Galactic Council representative attended the meeting via holographic presence. The shimmering blue image of a Vraxil diplomat flickered at the edge of the chamber. The Council appreciates human initiative, but proper protocols exist for regional security operations. The United Nations should have filed formal requests and waited for authorization. Admiral Yoon turned to face the hologram directly. How long would that authorization have taken? The standard review process requires 6 to 8 months, the Vraxil diplomat replied. And how many ships would have been attacked in that time? How many beings would have died while we waited for permission to save them? Admiral Yoon's voice was sharp now. High Speaker Threnva, you heard the numbers. 47 confirmed deaths in the year before we intervened. 0 deaths in the 17 days after. I respectfully submit that the mathematics speak for themselves. The Council suggests that established protocols exist to manage regional security, the diplomat continued, sounding uncomfortable. With respect, Admiral Yoon said, and her tone made clear she felt no respect at all. Established protocols left merchant vessels to fend off armed raiders with the promise of future bureaucratic action. We offered help. The help worked. If the Council would like to resume responsibility for Outer Reaches security, we welcome their fleet deployment. But until they do, we will remain. The chamber fell silent. Velthar watched the Council members exchange glances. The political implications were enormous. A newcomer species was essentially telling the Galactic Council that their response to piracy was inadequate, and humans would handle it themselves. It was bold. It was unprecedented. It was also completely justified by results. High Speaker Threnva rose from his seat. The Coalition Council will now vote on the proposal before us. The United Nations has offered a permanent security partnership. They will maintain patrol presence in the outer reaches at their own expense. No treaties required. No tribute demanded. Just cooperation between friends. He paused, looking around the chamber. All in favor? Every hand rose. The vote was unanimous. The Kashari Coalition formally accepts the Human Partnership Proposal, Threnva announced. Furthermore, we formally petition the Galactic Council to recognize humanity as an allied species with the Kashari Coalition. We stake our reputation on this friendship. The Vraxil diplomat's hologram flickered with what might have been surprise. The Council will consider this petition, though I should note that such recognition typically requires years of diplomatic process. Then I suggest the process begin immediately, Threnva replied. The humans have already proven themselves in action. The paperwork can catch up. Over the following months, the political landscape shifted in ways nobody had predicted. 3 other species approached humanity with similar requests. A Thelian delegation asked for anti-piracy cooperation in their trade routes. A Vren colony world requested human assistance training their planetary defense forces. An Ixari science expedition asked Earth to join a deep space research mission, specifically requesting human security personnel. The pattern was clear. Humanity's reputation was spreading across the galaxy, not as conquerors or merchants, but as protectors and partners. Species that had never heard of Earth 6 months ago were now seeking human friendship, and the humans, to everyone's surprise, seemed genuinely happy to help. The coffee tradition spread too. Human embassies opened on a dozen worlds, and each one included a coffee house. It became customary for diplomatic meetings to begin with coffee service. Other species started requesting the strange, bitter drink, not because they loved the taste, but because of what it represented. The human tradition of sitting with friends, sharing something simple, treating strangers as honored guests. Velthar returned to Earth 6 months after the rescue, now serving as the Kashari Coalition's official liaison to humanity. The formal reception was held at the United Nations headquarters, a beautiful building that looked out over Earth's oceans. Delegates from a dozen species attended, curious about these humans who had disrupted galactic politics so thoroughly. Ambassador Park, promoted from captain, served coffee to the assembled delegates personally. It was a deliberate gesture, showing that even in high diplomatic positions, humans valued the simple act of hospitality. Velthar watched as species who had been spacefaring for thousands of years accepted small cups from a human whose species had only been among the stars for 3 generations. Late in the reception, Velthar found Admiral Yoon on a balcony overlooking the ocean. The sun was setting, painting the water in shades of orange and gold. The Admiral stood quietly, watching the waves. "May I join you?" Velthar asked. "Please," Yoon replied. They stood in silence for a moment. Velthar had been wanting to ask one question for months. Now seemed like the right time. "Admiral, I understand your military strategy. I understand your diplomatic goals, but I still do not understand the why at the deepest level. You risked so much for strangers, not just once, but as a pattern, as a philosophy. Why?" Yoon was quiet for a long moment, watching the ocean. When she spoke, her voice was soft. "My grandmother survived a war on Earth when she was young, a terrible war. She told me about a neighbor who shared food when her family was starving, even though the neighbor barely had enough. She told me about a stranger who hid them when soldiers came, risking execution to protect people he had never met." Yoon turned to face Velthar. She said she learned that the measure of civilization is not technology or territory. It is whether you help someone who cannot repay you, whether you see suffering and say, "I can do something about this," instead of, "This is not my problem." "But the cost," Velthar said, "the risk, the political complications." "You needed help," Yoon replied simply. We could help. Everything else is just details. Velthar felt their throat sacs tighten with emotion. Your grandmother was wise. She was, Yoon agreed. And she would have liked you, I think. She believed that kindness was contagious, that one act of goodness could inspire others. Maybe she was right. Look at what has happened. We helped you. Now other species are asking us to help them. And some of them are starting to help each other too. Maybe the galaxy is learning. Or maybe humans are teaching it, Velthar said. The reception continued inside, full of politics and diplomacy and complicated negotiations about the future. But out on the balcony, two beings from different worlds shared a moment of understanding. The galaxy was changing, slowly perhaps, but changing. That night, Velthar sat in their quarters and recorded a personal log entry. It was something they had started doing after the rescue, trying to process everything that had happened. The humans have a saying, Velthar spoke into the recorder. Coffee and conversation solve most problems. I thought it was a joke at first. I understand now. The coffee is ritual. The conversation is connection, and both are offers of friendship without condition. The wandering Echo approached Earth expecting basic repairs. We received technology beyond our specifications, cultural exchange beyond our experience, and military support beyond our imagining. But the greatest gift was simpler than any of that. We received proof that in a galaxy often cold and calculating, there exists a species that considers, because we can help, to be reason enough. Velthar paused, collecting their thoughts. The Galactic Council still debates humanity's role in galactic affairs, but the rest of us have already decided. In the outer reaches, human patrols are called guardian angels. In Kashari space, children play games about human heroes, and across dozens of worlds, beings who have never met a human nevertheless know this truth. Somewhere in the galaxy, there are people who will come when you call, who will share their best technology, their strongest ships, and their strangest beverages, who will treat you not as transaction or burden, but as someone worth protecting. The recorder was still running, but Velthar fell silent, staring out the window at Earth below. The planet turned slowly in space, blue and green and white, impossibly beautiful. Somewhere down there, humans were living their lives, probably not thinking about how they had changed the galaxy. That was perhaps the most human thing of all. They did not help for glory or recognition. They helped because it was right. We approached Earth desperate and damaged, Velthar continued finally. We left with something more valuable than repairs. We left with friends. And in a galaxy that too often measures value in credits and favors owed, friendship freely given might be the most revolutionary force of all. Velthar ended the recording and looked at the coffee cup on the desk. It was empty now, but still warm. Tomorrow, the Wandering Echo would launch again, this time on a joint Kashari human deep space survey mission. The crew had requested it specifically. They wanted to work with humans. They wanted to learn more about these strange, generous aliens who had saved them. But tonight, there was time to simply sit and think, to remember the moment when a desperate distress call had been answered, not with calculations and conditions, but with immediate help and genuine friendship. To understand that the galaxy was a little less cold than it had been before. Outside the window, human and Kashari ships docked side by side at the expanded Luna station. Engineers from both species worked together on new projects. Scientists shared data. Military officers planned joint patrols. The partnership was growing, becoming something that would last generations. Velthar stood and walked to the window, pressing one hand against the transparent material. Earth turned below, and somewhere up in orbit, the Wandering Echo waited for tomorrow's launch. The ship was ready, better than ready. It carried the best of both their technologies now, a symbol of what cooperation could achieve. The future was uncertain. There would be challenges ahead. But for the first time in a long time, Velthar felt hopeful. Because somewhere in the galaxy there were humans. And humans, strange as they were, had taught everyone an old lesson that the galaxy had forgotten. Sometimes the right thing to do is also the simple thing. Someone needs help. You can help. So you do. Everything else, as Admiral Yoon said, is just details.